So here's some examples. When you're analyzing cause and effect and looking at your antecedent behavior and consequence, here's just very general so you get the idea of how narrow and specific you get. What is her name? Joanne. Thanks. So what is her name was the antecedent. The behavior was Joanne, and she only said Joanne because the antecedent, what is her name, occurred. Thanks occurred only because she gave the answer that that person wanted. Okay? So none of these would have occurred if the thing before hadn't occurred. Now you can have a different antecedent and have the same behavior and same consequence. You could have the same antecedent behavior and have a different consequence. But you look at each of those things as one minute little thing that is part of that ABC unit. It comes down to just that little bit that you're looking at. Here's one where there isn't any talking occurring. A loud noise happens, a student screams, teacher or the parent says, be quiet. Okay, so you can have just something occur in the environment, it causes a behavior to occur, and then you have somebody responding to that behavior. Another one, time to clean up your toys, the behavior no, and throws a toy. I put this here to show that you can have simultaneous behaviors, and you need to be sure that you're defining both of those because they're happening at the same time. It's different than somebody that just says no, different than somebody that just throws a toy. When you're taking data and you're trying to change a behavior, you have to know you're going to work on both of these. Both of these have to change, not just one or the other. And then the consequence was the teacher ignored the student, put a frown face next to cleanup on the student's chart. So that was something that she did. She, in this context, what you would kind of be thinking is, part of this is attention getting. She didn't say anything, she didn't do anything, but she gave a consequence of a type of punisher for not following the instruction. So she's trying to address both the non-compliance with the instruction and the attention getting. So those are where you really, really break down. And you need everybody to understand what's occurring in that situation. And that's why you really break it down. So that leads us to trying to understand the teaching component that we draw from that ABC paradigm. You use the ABC to teach skills of any age or population. And if you're going to use discrete child teaching, you break the skill down into smaller parts in order to do it. You teach each part until mastery. You provide concentrated teaching for as long as you need to. You provide prompting and fading, and you use reinforcement. These are all things we're going to talk about. But this discrete trial allows you to do that, allows you to break everything down so that you can teach all the little things that the student isn't getting. That's why traditional teaching does not work for kids on the spectrum, because you are doing so much at once when you're teaching using traditional methods. And you, a student with autism, isn't going to pick it up because of all the disabling conditions they have, and you would have no idea why, because you haven't broken it down to know where it is that they're not learning and what they're not learning. You have to break all that stuff down. Now, this is something that a lot of people, there's controversy around the discrete trial teaching method. Not all ABA teaching uses discrete trial teaching. Have any of you heard of Lobos? Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a lot of controversy around Lobos. He was the original person that started the early intervention research of using ABA with kids with autism spectrum disorder specifically. He was a brave pioneer. There was a lot of mistakes that he made, and that's what always happens if you're the first one trying it, right? So there's a lot of people that, oh, ABA, oh, that's Lobos, we don't do that. It's not what ABA is. Lobos didn't intend to do that. He learned from his mistakes. He died. We had people move further from his research. But if you don't have that research basis that he did, we wouldn't be anywhere today. So I just want you to know that discrete trial teaching does not have to look like what people say, oh, that Lobos stuff. it's a very, very effective tool, especially for kids from moderate to severe. And for any kid, mild to severe, that is having difficulty with any specific thing that you're trying to teach them. But it's really important to understand that our research base comes from 30, 40 years of almost him doing his research at UCLA, and he made a big difference. One of the things that I really didn't like when I was starting off working in the 90s was he was just starting to figure out that a lot of the kids were turning out like robots. They had this rote learning where they just repeated an answer, didn't show any understanding. You know, they go to a different environment, they weren't generalizing their skills, so what good was it that what they were saying? So he started, and other people started to do research into what was happening, and it was that understanding coming out of the lack of generalization that the kids on the spectrum didn't have. We didn't realize how drastic it was until they broke it down into the research and figured that out. So now we have all these strategies around generalizing and working to make sure that our kids generalize from the beginning and they're not turning into kids that are just rote responders. It comes from prompt dependency and all those sorts of things. So each teaching session, you have all kinds of trials, and the thing about them that is really great that allows you to teach well and to take data is that you have a beginning and end to each trial. So you have a distinct beginning where you provide the instruction, you have the behavior response, and then you have a consequence. And you can take data on that, and you can repeat, and you can do again, and you can adjust, but because you have that discrete unit, you really know exactly what you're teaching because you've broken it down that small, and you can take data so that you know what pattern of learning is occurring or what pattern of regression might be occurring, why they're not learning, why they're losing their skill. You master skills before you move on. It allows you to have that ability to take data to understand, right now, they're about 40% correct. Right now, they're 60%. We're moving towards mastery. Or maybe we had 50% and now they're at 30%. What's happening? You can understand that when you take that data. Just like I was talking about before, it's distinguishable from traditional teaching because it's very small units of information and you're always involving the student. There's this very active learning part of the student that's taking place in that. Are you guys familiar with direct instruction? SRA, McGraw-Hill, love that stuff, love it. Teaching language, connecting math concepts, all those sorts of things. It's like the natural next step from discrete trial teaching. When you're working with some of those kids and they're doing really well, they've progressed very well, and they needed this to begin with, direct instruction is that like natural next step because it does the same thing. Teaches, requires student feedback, and you give feedback, and it's that constant student involvement so that you get that feedback and know before you move on, are they learning? Allows you to take data and really helps that to be an active, successful process. All right, so here it is. It's the same, it's ABC, but when you're teaching, it's discriminative stimulus. So I'm giving you the technical term. Layman's term, it's your instruction. The materials you present, the question you ask. ABA, it's the SD. It's the stimulus you're presenting, which is the antecedent to cause a behavior. Okay, so you are, in all of your discrete trial teaching, you are very carefully deciding what your instruction is going to be, how you're going to present the materials so that you have control of that and you can take data on that to know if that is the appropriate instruction or materials that they need. You have the response that the student provides after you give the SD, and you know then, is it incorrect or is it correct? The difficult thing here is that oftentimes, which is also a good thing, student works with more than one instructor. Everybody needs to know exactly what we're requiring of the student because It's amazing how many people have variations on what they think is the correct or incorrect answer. And if you're inconsistent across instructors, you will never have learning of a skill. So the taking of data that goes to every person and they can see that data, and having team meetings so that you're careful about what you are accepting, what you're not accepting as a correct response, which includes what we're going to talk about, what you're doing for prompting, what you're doing for reinforcement, all that kind of stuff. And then you have the consequence that you provide to let that child know whether their response was correct or incorrect. So in this case, you're going to provide feedback that will reinforce that response to increase it, or to not increase that response, whether it's we call it a punisher. It's not necessarily you're doing anything mean to them, but it's to decrease that response because it was incorrect. Okay, so here's examples. Give me the cookie, student hands her the cookie, teacher, the parent says, great. Okay, it's broken down into that. What color? Purple. That's right. Now, on a procedure sheet, I would have written also, what are you presenting when you say what color? Are you presenting any object that's purple, or are you presenting a card that's purple color? That type of thing. Or you're saying match these and put cards on the table. Student does nothing, teacher removes the cards. So in that case, you had an incorrect response, and the teacher will be then moving into what we call a correction procedure. But you break that one teaching unit down so that you can take data on that and then know how the learning is occurring. How often are we getting correct responses? What are we using to reinforce the appropriate responses? What are we using to decrease the inappropriate responses? It also helps you to know, are we all using the same instruction? Have we agreed upon that, or are we confusing the child and we're getting incorrect responses because we've mixed up how we're presenting the instruction? I tell people whenever I come to help them that I always analyze them first as the teachers. When it comes to teaching, most of it is on our shoulders. And then we look at what's happening with the child. Because on this end and this end, we are the ones responsible. So we've got way more things that we're responsible for than the student. So many things you can change here, and you can change here, and you get the correct response. You don't always just say, well, the student is just doing this, the student does this, the student does this. So I always just say, well, first I'm going to see what you do. I'm not here to offend you or to just be on you that you're just doing everything wrong, but I'm here to analyze how you are teaching and how you are reinforcing or not reinforcing behaviors and responses. Because we have so much to do with our teaching, and we have to understand that our kids that are on the spectrum do not learn in typical ways. They do not just absorb from the environment. We have to be so explicit, and so many things we have to apply externally, and that just puts that much more on our shoulders.